Hey everyone, welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
Glad to have everyone here. Cool. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. Before I wanted to introduce the team, I wanted to ask if you do have questions now, during, after the talk, throw them in the Q&A. We'd love to hear them. We're going to have a panel and more of a discussion at the end, so we'd love to hear from you. We have a question going on right now in the chat, which is, a real honest and vulnerable one, which is what we're here to talk about. Any mistakes that you have that you would like to share that may have sunk your inbound sales funnel. So let's have fun with it. And today's topic is a good one. And yeah, I'm excited to get started. So today's topic, again, is all about being honest and having these mistakes that we've made in the past that may have caused our inbound sales funnel to really take a dip. And maybe you're feeling that dip a little bit, right? It's a topic I know that we can talk for hours. There's so much to cover. So again, yeah, drop in what you want to talk about, and we'll discuss it at the end of our panel session. So I'm Erin Harchi. I head brand and demand gen here at Avoma. For anyone who doesn't know what Avoma is, we are an AI meeting assistant and conversation intelligence tool. And we basically help teams improve outcomes from all of their customer-facing conversations. So we help teams book meetings, we write notes and automate CRM data entry for reps, help augment coaching for managers, and give revenue insights to leaders based on what's going on across all of their interactions that you're all having with your buyers. So feel free to check us out. And yeah, today I have two amazing fellow marketers speaking with me on this great topic: 6 rookie mistakes sinking your inbound sales funnel. So first up, we have Shannon Curran, who is the VP of Marketing at Mad Kudu. So Shannon, if you want to take a minute and just introduce yourself to everyone and say hi.
Awesome. So my name is Shannon Curran, and I, as Erin just said, am the VP of Marketing at Mad Kudu. We're a revenue intelligence platform that helps revenue teams make sure they're focusing and prioritizing the right leads to make sure that each one closes every single time. So I'm really excited to be here today. This is something I'm very passionate about. So, and I didn't type my rookie mistake, but I feel like most of mine started when I worked as a PR person, which is like the highest stress job maybe there is that I've ever had. Most of it being sending the wrong messages to the wrong reporters, and reporters really, really hate that. You think buyers are mean, like they're on another level. For sure, not immune to the conversation around rookie mistakes, for sure.
I get it. I there's been a couple times where you keep the same name from the last email and you're like, oh my gosh, nightmare situation.
It hurts. It does.
So
Yep.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Think about it for days after that. I still think but yeah, next, Matt Lyman, VP of Demand Gen at Lean Data. So Matt, if you'd like to say hello and kind of introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Matt. Thank you for having me on here. For those of you who haven't heard of Lean Data is a revenue orchestration platform. We are native to Salesforce, so it allows you to take any object, any field, match and route, but then ingest all of those enrichment tools, push it into your enablement platforms, engagement platforms, all of that. So a one-stop shop to be able to put it all together and turn what we like to say is turn those buyer signals into buying decisions.
Ooh, love it.
Well, you gotta quote everything and brand everything, right?
I love it. Yeah. So you guys, I think we have the perfect team today to talk about this, and really excited let's dive into it. So I wanted to start off with some of the issues that you're probably experiencing when you're not keeping up with optimizing your inbound sales funnel, right? Because I think today in this market with the competitors, with buyers not being really out there, it's a lot harder to maybe get away with some of these mistakes. So on the buyer's end, They may get annoyed. They might bail if there's any hiccups or delayed, right? They might be frustrated. On your end, as a seller, you're probably dealing with a lot of no-shows. Maybe you're getting less qualified conversions that are piling up. Maybe your sales team is frustrated and kind of distracted with maybe some crap that's coming in, right? And let's not forget about the ops side, because marketing needs these straightforward workflows and lots of clean data coming in to make these decisions and to really boost these conversions. And I think that's really why we're here today, is that ultimate goal. So, and today's sales funnel is not a straight line, right? Buyers interact with us and the communities around us so much more now before they even get to our sales team. And we're different as solutions. It's becoming less common to be that one trick pony, right? We become very horizontal in our solutions, and buyers now expect us to reduce all friction, cut these delays, or they're out, right? And we really need to make these right connections with our sales team and the buyers in order to turn these conversations into wins. So what I want to do is focus today on some of the rookie mistakes that might be slowing you down. So the first one that we have is mistake number one. You're making your buyers jump through too many hoops to talk to you. So I love this 5-minute rule concept. We now know that conversions are about 8 times higher when a connection is made within the first 5 minutes versus waiting 6+ minutes. And I think a big mistake that we find ourselves in is thinking that the buyer's number one focus is looking for our solution. And that's kind of all they do, right? But like you, buyers have a million things going on. They have their own tasks, they have their own goals. When they are looking for a solution, they want to talk to you right now, right? Once they're on to that next task, you've lost them, their mind is elsewhere. So first thing that you can do is skipping that back and forth dance that sales team has to do after that form is filled to schedule that meeting. And letting them book right on your website and letting them feel like they checked off that task, right? Your meetings are going to be going up, meetings booked. And it's really painful for the entire GTM team to make sure that that follow-up is happening within that first 5 minutes. I know that I've had so many conversations with my sales team, like, we have to make that 5-minute jump. So, and often that's not happening, right? They have meetings that they're in, they're busy. So let's just skip that requirement altogether. And Shannon, I think that a common mistake also is not just having a lead fill out the form and sales team doing that outreach, but then you also see these like 5 to 6 dreaded questions of sending it to the prospect and having them kind of do the work of how they want their meeting to go. And discovery is as well as happening over email as well. So how can us marketers really step in and eliminate a lot of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you'll find a common thread here is pain and friction, right? So how can we make things less painful and have less friction? Which I think a lot of the great marketing teams now are using enrichment, are using data to be able to give their sales team a lot more education on all of their leads. Right. So the best sellers are great sellers. And I think over my career, I've seen that they get bogged down a lot by like the tasks in their day that are getting in the way of them selling. So what marketing teams should really be doing is letting our sellers sell. Right. And
Yes.
so really being able to give them as much information as possible on an account so that that account feels seen right right from the beginning of that first call, and you're able to provide value in the first 5 minutes, right? Like we definitely see if you're able to provide ROI in the first 10 minutes, that the likelihood of that deal closing is significantly higher. So instead of making them answer a bunch of questions that you probably should know yourself, it is definitely a way for marketing and sales to partner really closely together, for marketing to make sales feel like they can really win every time they get on the phone or on Zoom, I guess, most of the time these days.
I think that's so important, right? Like if there's information or discovery that you can do on your own, do it, right? If on the marketing side, on the sales side, don't have the buyers have to put in all that work, because it's just going to leave them frustrated. It's just going to be I mean, no one likes that, right? No one likes to fill out a 6-question survey just to have a meeting to answer their 1 to 2 questions maybe they have top of mind.
Yeah. And if I could just jump in really fast on that
Mhm.
too, I think from what you just said, Aaron, ties into sharing all that information as well.
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
you're able to get that, how are you pushing that context over to the sales rep or
Mhm.
whoever's picking it up? So when they reach out in that first 5 minutes, they're reaching out with pertinent information.
Mhm.
So nobody wants, an example I use a lot with my team, and I've said in other things, is like, if I go to your site and I visit 5 different areas on 2 different products, you probably want to contact me about either A, what I asked for, or B, the three pages I looked at on the one product. Start there. Whatever
Mhm.
showed the most, right? So taking that data and putting it all together and really sharing it around is huge,
Mhm.
because it's what the customer will like. It'll show that, and hopefully start a relationship off on a really good step.
Yeah, 100%. I also wanted to give kind of a little bit of uh, just a tip of also trying to get that meeting booked within the first day. And I know that's a little bit hard when you have them choosing the time slots, but making sure that they have enough that if they do want to talk to you that day or the next day, that they're able to do so. I think a lot of the time, like if we have a router or whatever, we're setting it to um, have like 4 to 6 hours at least time to like set up the meeting. But there's actually a lot of data out there that suggests that if we are the first one to connect with them, they're more likely to go with our solution. I think it's a crazy number, like 70 or 80% buyers go with the first vendor, right? Which makes sense. They hear about you guys, maybe you give them a demo, talk to them, they're kind of wowed by you, and then they're like, okay, every other solution after that, they're comparing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
then
Yep.
now it just becomes a check mark. What do you have? What do you don't have? And it becomes like more of a routine. So um, getting there first, I think, so important. Mistake number 2 is that we're not qualifying the lead before it gets to our sales team. So, how do most sales teams qualify leads today? Right? Lead fills out the form, sales connects with that lead, and then the sales tells marketing, hey, this lead was qualified or this is crap, right? But the issue here is 27% of leads that are coming inbound are actually qualified and sales ready. So, how do we make sure that we're taking out all of the noise really early out of that funnel so that our sales team isn't kind of bogged down by that? And how we do that is, again, qualifying the lead before it even gets to the sales team when they're actually filling out that form. And many of you might be using a round robin or a workflow where the next lead kind of goes to the next salesperson in line, right? I've definitely made this mistake before, and I really encourage everyone to kind of get out of that kind of workflow um, because when it's up to the salesperson to figure out who that lead is, what they want, how to solve their issue, and doing all of that work, and you're not kind of maybe there's not the right connection between buyer and seller, um, there can be a lot of issues there. And there's a lot that marketing can do to help qualify leads before it even is getting to your sales team. Because we have to remember we're all people, people buy from people at the end of the day, right? But Matt, starting off with just a simple form, how do we make sure that we're getting all the information we need without
Yeah.
bombarding the prospect, right? We don't want to send them like 20 questions
Right. Right.
questionnaire. So where do we even start here?
This is my favorite marketing term in the world is it depends, right? That's a good answer on a webinar too, right?
Yeah.
But I think the idea here is it's going to be based off of who you're selling to and how they usually intake uh, um, that content. So what I mean by that is there are 2 big hot button topics right now, 2 things that will throw everybody off the rails, and that's forms and MQLs, right? We can get into these arguments and it's a big marketing back and forth on all of them. But there are times where you need that form, so you can qualify that.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it correctly, having maybe some enrichment behind it, or you're asking only the questions you need to get the basics. So you're not going to necessarily be able to qualify them across the board. But if it's as simple as, look, I'm in B2B SaaS. We work in the Salesforce ecosystem. It's as simple for us to potentially just say, what CRM do you use? Right there, if they don't use Salesforce, we can weed them out, maybe throw them into a nurture as a human, just in case that ever changes, etc. But really, the idea of getting the information you need to get them to that next step. I do believe in round robins and workflows. You said don't just use, so I'm not obviously arguing that. But getting people to the right people based off of what they do and how they work. You very well may need industry. Again, some of these large companies, if you are on a team that has multiple business units, you have multiple different tool sets, maybe you need to add in what industry are you in? You may have to add in, are you B2B or B2C? You may have to add something like that, but always keep it as short as you can, while also getting as much context as you can. And that's where a lot of tools comes in, unfortunately, right? We can't get away from the tools all the time. But really just knowing that they don't want you to answer those questions in a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And you mentioned a little bit about enrichment, and Shannon, I know that you have some kind of thoughts there. How do we even figure out what we can enrich versus, okay, this is something we actually need to get from the prospect?
Yeah. So honestly, pretty much so we kind of talk about third-party data and first-party data, right? Like those are kind of like the two ways that you can put that information together to hopefully get a really great picture of your prospect before you get on a call. And pretty much everything about your prospect does exist on the internet. I know we are getting into a potentially cookieless future, so this is more than. But talk about. We'll just bring up all the things that people have feelings about.
Don't put that nightmare on you.
Should we talk about the Gmail stuff right now too? Is that what you?
But I do believe that there is technology out there that is able to give your teams all of the information that they need so that the forms can be really simple, right? So you can ask, like Matt was saying, the critical questions, but also most of that information does exist. If your prospects, like what their technology that they're using, you understand what behaviors they've done on your website. Like Matt was talking about earlier, they've been to your pricing page, they've been to a certain product line page, and you're able to get a great picture of who they are going to your sales team. And I think this is where I talk a lot about the actual human impact of these processes and this technology is building trust between marketing and sales, right? So this is marketing and sales being able to have a really objective definition of what quality looks like, right? So we're talking about qualifying, like there's no subjective, like, hey, this call sucked, like this is wrong. It's like, well, actually what we're saying is this is the profile that looks exactly like our closed won deals. Like that's exactly, we're telling you, that's what it looks like. We agreed on that. And so every single one of these leads that is marked as whatever, very good, I won't get into technology, is like, we've already agreed that that's the profile that we know does really well for us. But we also know that can change, right? Build a feedback loop, build that trust. And you're actually able to show that marketing is working on not just filling calendars for sales, but really filling bank accounts for sales, right? That's kind of how I've talked about it before, is like their calendars. I'd like your calendar to only be full of closed won deals. Like be bored all the other time, right? Be prospecting. So I think that there's definitely a human component to this as well. As you buy from people, but you also work with people. And I think that that's really important.
100%. No, I love that. Next mistake is that every lead is going to your sales team. I think that's a perfect segue into this, right?
Sorry, I jumped the gun on that.
You jumped the gun.
No, this is a fun one, right? A little bit maybe controversial right now. But you don't have to talk to everyone, and actually you shouldn't. Don't be afraid to route people away from your sales team if they're not in your ICP. What I mean by that, I am not saying to ignore them, right? We're not saying to tell them, sorry, take your business elsewhere. I just mean that if they are not in your ICP, maybe they're just one person that wants one license, they don't really need to spend 30 plus minutes meeting with your sales reps, right? What happens? Your sales team gets overwhelmed, they get frustrated. You're forcing your sales team to prioritize these low value deals, right? And you're continuing to pay um, for these leads top of the funnel, which is probably as marketers what we care about most, right? Is how do we kind of take them out? We can do this by sending them to a thank you page, right? Pack them with on demand demos, customer testimonials. You could still have a little, button that says, if you still want to talk to our sales team, if you still have questions, here you go. But if they're a one user, probably best to send them through product led motion, invite them to a trial, maybe put them in a sequence that talks more about an on kind of a demo experience and how they can best utilize your product. So, what's this going to do? Firstly, your sales team is only going to focus on these higher quality leads, which is going to increase your win rate, ACV. We all love that. We all love to see that. And your channels are going to get the leads that you want, right? You're telling all of these paid channels, hey, stop sending me these buyers because they don't fit my criteria. Send me more of what my sales team is looking for. And you can be a little bit more strategic with that. But Shannon, I think that this is controversial because people listening, especially in this market, might be saying, hey, I barely have leads coming in, right? There's barely buyers out there. I have to talk to everyone. How do we respond to that? And really kind of balance between talking to everyone, especially in today's day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think this gets a little bit to Frank's question over here about full cycle AEs. So I'm happy to work that in as well. I'm sure Matt, you have thoughts on that as well. So yeah, I think there is this fear. And I know I'm not tone deaf to it. I don't think anyone is, right? When you do a presentation now in this market, it's really different than it was in 2020, right? We're not just saying like, you have so much volume, you need to find the gold or like the needle in the haystack, right? Now it's like, you have a few pieces of hay and there like is some dirt and you're like kind of just trying to figure out where anything could be, right? Yeah. And I think that there is this want to like, but maybe that person could be good. They're not. It's like dating. They're not. Like you should move on and spend time with the deals that you know could potentially close and also potentially expanding in those, right? And then spending time outside of your current funnel too, making sure your funnel is looking tight and then spending that extra time prospecting, right? And I think to Frank's point around SDRs and full cycle AEs, we're actually seeing a lot of companies change the role of the SDR. So like the SDR can now be lots of things. It can be kind of like a concierge service to the AE. It can be a brand play. Like they are the first touch to a lot of people. Like I've been saying this for a long time, like the first touch your brand gets to some people is an SDR, for better or for worse, right? So using them as a different channel and thinking about SDR, the person, like the role versus SDR, the tasks, right? Because a lot of those tasks can be automated. And so really seeing the future of the SDR or the XDR you're seeing some people talk about is something that can really help here, which is let's farm and find new business. Maybe you're looking at different industries, but don't take business and put it on calendars that you know is not going to close. Like that's not going to, it's just not going to change. Even though you feel like you really want to, it's definitely not worth it.
Yeah. I love the dating kind of suggestion. I think there's a fear of if I don't talk to them, then I'll never know if they were this magical deal that's hiding in there, right? Odds are they probably
they're not.
I think that also connects to a question that we had with the SDRs kind of reaching out and doing discovery calls. One question that we got is any thoughts on a discovery call with the SDR and then potentially another discovery call with the AE before the product is even shown versus directing them where some of these steps are skipped. I think that's a great question.
Can I jump in on that?
You go, Matt. Please take that.
Just I want to even jump back to something we said at the very beginning, that like they're people.
Mhm.
And I sort of think that a North Star should always be like, how do I want to go through this process? Right? Do you want to have a call with an SDR and then have another call with an AE and then get into the product?
No.
I know that there are processes for some of these things, and some products are extremely difficult or complicated, and you have to kind of walk through the whole thing, right? But if you have an SDR call, I'm a firm believer in being able to give the SDRs enough to walk through, whether it's a standard demo that is maybe viewable on your website already, but like a click through, where they can say, so look at this. This is how it works. This is what it does. They get more information, they find out information, and they work on selling the solution. Bringing the AE in is the next step, where you can dive into further, maybe bring along the actual contract information. Like for me as a buyer, if I have to have 4 different calls to get to a point where I understand what the product does, I want a different product. So in general, I would say, please don't do that. The SDR should have at least enough information, even if it's a 10-minute call, that then let's just say they only come in, they have some conversation, they do a quick qualification. Sure, make sure it's budget and that we're the right fit for them. The AE needs to be demoing the product.
Yeah.
Needs to be showing it, needs to be walking through it, because that, again, you're creating a relationship with these prospects at that point. And if they start with a bad experience, they're going to think that even if they sign, it's going to be a bad experience. You might have the best customer service in the world, but if you can't sell it up front, they're not going to get to that point.
Yeah. And I think I think it's so brilliant and maybe overlooked, of like, just put it through the lens of, would you want to be doing these things? If you were a buyer, would this be acceptable for you, or would this be a pain in the butt, right? And one thing is, I think it's actually pretty surprising that a lot of AEs don't actually listen to prior calls. It's so easy to just record the calls, take 15-20 minutes to just listen to the SDR call, so you're not repeating questions, repeating information. I think
take the notes.
Yeah,
take the notes, have the fields, like and put it into Slack, so they have that when they jump into it. Like that needs to be captured for sure.
Look at the data, look at the call notes. That small thing can do so much of a difference. I mean, you don't want to be repeating the same question. All right, what are you looking for? Okay, now it's the next person. What are you looking for? It's like, okay, can
I already tell the SDR that on a previous call? Like,
exactly. I mean, that's
we're going back to the dating analogy. I already told you that. Like, just remember. Be thoughtful. I think that it really does come down to, like, we just want a thoughtful experience that you think someone else is listening to you. Everyone's buying software to solve a problem, not because they like buying stuff. Like, who likes buying software? Like, it's like not a great, like, I don't know. Some people do.
If I raised my hand, would you judge me, Shannon?
Yeah, well, the mops in you loves it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think there's very few people that are like, I'm doing this because it's such a great use of my time, right? Like, I think what they want to do is solve a problem with your software, right? So we got to get them to solving before we try to put them through a giant, series of hoops to get them there. And the first person to solve the problem is usually the one that gets the sale order.
For sure.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just going to say that, like, if they're coming to you to solve a problem, they have a problem. And the more meetings you set up created more problems, because they're already having meetings to try to solve the problem.
And now they hate you.
Exactly.
No, I love it. Mistake number 4 is probably one of my favorite. Something that we don't think about often is these conversations that's happening with your sales team are not personalized to the buyer. Buyers are nearly about 70% done with all of their research, with kind of their buyer's journey before even contacting your sales team. And we have to remember that, right? They're coming into that first meeting with different objectives, with different questions, different needs, pain points than all of the other buyers, right? Every buyer is so different. And the first issue is we don't want to give them more information than what they can already find online, right? And the second issue is odds are we're giving the same exact experience, whether the demo, whether kind of the questions we're asking, what we're walking them through, we're giving that same experience to every single person, regardless of who they are. And it makes sense. Even it doesn't matter how much discovery you do. Sometimes your rep comes in knowing the demo they're going to give. They have a rhythm. They know, they know what kind of cues they need to go through. So how do we break that so that the buyer feels like, again, yeah, wow, these guys really get me, right? Because that's going to be how you really stand out from the crowd. And we talked about how to qualify the prospect before it even gets to the sales team. Use that information, right? Personalize these demos, personalize the agendas, have conversations that resonate better with the prospect. For example, an SMB customer that's going to come in to you talking to the sales team, they're going to completely care about different things than an enterprise account, for example. Companies with different industries, they're going to care about all different things. So when you personalize that buyer's experience, it's going to make you really stand out, and they're going to take a step back and be like, wow, they really understand me. So what can we do here? Really prep our meetings and tailor messages ahead of time based on the buyer persona you're meeting with. Address common pain points that get brought up. We can use similar customer stories, case studies that really resonate better with them, right? More like that persona. I think the biggest thing here is gathering feedback, actually talking to these different buyers and what's wrong, what's working, what's not working. And I think personalization, everyone out there is saying, yeah, that's great. That's a great idea, right? But okay, maybe this is way too much work. Maybe I'm one person. Maybe I have a couple people on my team. We have so many other things that we have to worry about. Shannon, how would you respond here? And what may be small things that we can do that the buyer can still say, wow, they really understand me and they see me differently than every other buyer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I also want to speak to the chat. Is I'm loving the chat right now. And I think that actually I'm going to add on to people don't buy software. They actually buy often organizational change. And
Mm,
that the best software companies actually change the behavior of the way that the organization behaves. And I think that is a little bit of a spicy topic because I think some people are like, no, I just want to put a scheduler on my website. And it's like, well, what you're actually doing is changing the behavior of your teams. And the
Mhm.
best software companies in the world, like the HubSpots, they literally fundamentally changed the way people did marketing, right? Like people do it differently now. And I think that there's a huge opportunity to do that if you really understand your buyers, right? I'm not really answering this question, so now I'll answer it. Little things that you can do. So you have this information on your buyers, let them know that you already know it, right?
mhm.
So whether that's in the first touch, whether that's there, we've actually seen some really cool call them playbooks, but like with reading people's LinkedIn. So if they're a person that has a lot of content on their LinkedIn saying like, we saw this is someone you care about, this is something we know we can solve, let us solve it before you even tell me it's a problem, right? Like that
I love that.
is especially when we have less volume, right? We're talking here, you're hearing a lot of people say we need 5x pipeline coverage, 6x pipeline coverage now, because we're getting way more no-shows, we're getting a lot more non-decides. So how can you, instead of like just constantly trying to fill the funnel if it doesn't exist, like how can you really do a one-to-one approach with the deals that you do have? And there are tiny things, right? Just make them feel seen, make them feel like they are important to you and not just another call on your calendar.
I love that. I love just being straightforward and saying, "Hey, this is the." We all know that we're doing discovery. We know that enrichment's happening. We know that there's all these things and ways to get to know a buyer and their pain points before the meeting is actually happening. And I think maybe a fear is like, "Oh, I don't want to be seen as like creepy that I'm like stalking these people." But like all of this information is coming in, and so I think it's better. People appreciate being straight up and being kind of vulnerable to bringing up these kind of pain points first.
Yeah, and if I could jump on that too a little bit, it comes down to again, like the conversation back and forth, like this is not, we're all marketers talking about this and we keep saying sales, but the truth is that we are providing things to sales, and we need to be providing that context. And if we're providing the context of what people are looking at, where they're going, who they are, I mean, there's even some products out there that can tell you if, I won't say their name, but they can tell you where in a buying cycle they are, right? So you can go through and do those things, but it really comes down to the execution. And so just one really quick thing that I want to throw out there is buyers care about different things. If you can hit people with what they care about, you're going to increase your conversion rate. Okay. So I did an analysis on this a year or so ago, where I was seeing where it was like more, there's some certain things that were just kind of the throw it out there, do it, everybody gets the same thing. And you could see that there were approximately a 1.5% win rate on those. But the minute you put into it the things that we've already sort of talked about, with you qualify it before, you hand it off, you give them a more specific piece of content, snippets, etc., you can see that percentage going up 5 to 7%. Now you think about that throughout your entire funnel, throughout your entire volume, your SDRs are now doing more work maybe on one, but it's more valuable. They're getting it through, and you can potentially easily do add-ons, all that, just to keep pushing on that. So instead of it being about just the quantity that's coming in, because we're all worried about that, the more you can do that, the more quality you can provide, and the more quality you're actually pulling out of it.
Oh, yeah, 1000%. I love the gift that also went into the chat of let ChatGPT do it, which is a funny joke, but honestly, utilize it, right? I use ChatGPT every single day. If that is going to make your life easier, then to kind of get all of this prepared ahead of time, I would say go for it. I don't know how you guys feel about ChatGPT, but
I have some thoughts, and I'm happy to answer, but I'll let Shannon go first if she does.
No, Matt, you go. I'll jump on the back of that one.
It's a tool. It should never be your be all end all. It should never be anything. You know what I love using it for? This is one of the first use cases I heard about when it was really becoming super popular, was taking those long transcripts of calls, just throwing them into it and finding out what comes out of it, summarizing things.
Yes.
It is really good. And everyone's still trying to figure this out. Finding out what the internet thinks you do as a company.
Ooh.
Go put your company in there and say, what do they do? And then look at it and go, oh man, we got work to do.
I've done that, and it's scary. I encourage everyone to do that, because that's the future, right? If ChatGPT truly understands what you do, or they don't truly understand what you do, I think that's going to be huge.
Yep. And then take your biggest point. My last one, and then I'll shut up. And then take like your biggest message or whatnot that you push out there, and ask it to tell you 5 things, either 5 buyers or 5 pain points or 5 whatever, and see if it comes back with either A, what you already know, or B, something brand new, because that's going to give you areas to go look at, check it with your SEO, do all that stuff.
Yeah, I was pretty much going to say the same thing. I think it's also, you can ask it what you do by persona too, which I think is a really interesting, like, what value does this software provide a CMO? What value does this software provide the manufacturing industry or whatever? It also is just like a little intern researcher, like, if you're starting to sell into a new category and you want to know or into a new industry, and you're like, hey, I've never sold into construction before. What are the big events in construction? Like, there is definitely like a research component for sure that I think it's useful, but you hear a lot of folks talking about it as like a co-pilot, right? Like and I also love the concept of it automates the jobs to be done, right? There's this list of tasks, of jobs to be done that can be automated so that humans can human even better, right? Like so that sellers can be selling even better, that the kind of special sauce that a human being brings to this process, like, is allowed to actually take more time doing that. Whereas they can take a lot less time doing transcript reductions. Like, I've done it for customer interviews. Like, if you work on a marketing team, you want to do case studies, which usually took a long time. Yours, like, I remember when I first started, working, you would take like 20 hours on a case study with a freelance writer, right? Like all the technical research, like all this stuff. And now
Mhm.
you can do it in a super short amount of time if you're a great interviewer. It will never be the person that's able to have a great conversation, but it's able to transcribe that and give you kind of the key takeaways. So for sure, I think if your teams aren't using it, they should be, but also being wary that you should check it because everyone's using it, right? So if you're you'll all send the same emails to each other that are sending ChatGPT emails to themselves. It gets really weird. Really fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Copilot versus autopilot, very important. Don't put it on autopilot. It's not going to be great.
No.
Cool. And so this is a little bit of a bonus mistake for number 4, personalizing your conversations. I think another reason why your conversations aren't personalized are you're not playing your best players, right? High quality leads should go to your top reps. I think that we kind of mentioned that buyers are all different, but also we should talk about the fact that your reps are all different, right? If you look at sports, right? From an early age, I think like 6th grade, you start playing the positions that you excel at, right? And best players get played more. I've been I've been like watching the playoffs. I don't know if you guys have kind of gotten swollen into the NFL playoffs, but you see
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes, and most of the time he's like there'll be a wide open person, and he passes it to Travis or he throws it away. Because Travis Kelce, maybe it might be a Taylor Swift conspiracy. I don't know, but he gets more yards, right? He doesn't. Mahomes is not just passing it up to the next player who's up. But I find it fascinating that we do this in sales, where it's like the next rep who is up in line just gets the next buyer that comes in. But your sales team has different strengths, right? They play better in different situations, similar to athletes. And I think that one thing that's overlooked is that we don't use that to our advantage. And that this is, this is all sounds great. How do we start? How do we take something as simple as maybe filling out the form or knowing the enrichment or discovery that's we're doing, like we talked about, from the buyer, and how do we pair them up with that best rep to get that win and get the potential win, I guess.
Wow. Yes. Can I just say yes? Quick side note. I do watch the playoffs. I am a Seahawks fan, unfortunately,
nice.
right now. So anyway, I think we've touched on a few of the things already before, right? So playing your best players is going to be the ones who are the best at what they do, but it's also the best on what you're looking for. So it's not hey, look, this rep closes everything all the time. Let's give them everything.
Yeah.
It can be, depending on the size and depending on all the things.
Yeah.
But let's say we go back to industry, and Shannon mentioned construction. Let's just do that. Let's say you're trying to sell to the construction industry. The odds are very high that your entire team doesn't know how to sell to the construction industry, but one person might. So maybe that's your best player. Or you have a territory-based model where you're selling on the West Coast and you're going to have to be on the ground all the time. Your best player might be the person who can go and do that. So I think best players is great because it is both subjective and objective, which I don't think is a thing, but it allows you to define that as a team, build it out, and then watch that go. And it kind of goes back to the round robin piece too, right? I would actually, Aaron, take your metaphor or your example of Mahomes to Kelce and take it back to the same weekend where Lamar Jackson, they lost that game because he wasn't playing great, and because on a 4th down they threw it to a guy who was not their best wide receiver who dropped it in a wide open pass. So you got to give the guys the chance to play. If there's stuff there, blah 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 blah. So if you got a round robin and you send them off, let's say you're being very specific about numbers, and SLAs are being missed, people aren't hitting quota, include a clawback in it. Include hey, look, we just round robin these 5. This one person has missed SLAs on 3. Great, we're redirecting them. They're not yours anymore.
Yeah. I think a great question just got into the chat, which is what happens if your best player leaves.
Mhm.
And are you training others for backup, or do you change you change your strategy now? I think that's huge, right? I'm not sure. I think what Matt said is what defines a best player. I think you have to
Yeah.
look at the strengths of your team, and that might change. Your sales rep is going to change maybe month after month, and maybe you have to make those changes, right? And maybe we don't want to, but maybe that's important if you have an entirely different team, or maybe the people who come on board, you find out that they have sold to a certain industry. They are maybe best with enterprise customers. Maybe there's something in there that you really want to expose, and then you start routing by that. I don't know what your
Mhm.
guys' thoughts are there.
Yeah, I think this one's really dependent on company stage too, right? So I think that there's like a different profile for reps at really early stage companies than, folks that are on large scale sales teams where they can be more specialized, right? Like I think if you have a product that's consistently changing a lot and you need to have a sales rep that's super agile and is able to learn and pivot a lot, I think that, I work at a Series A right now, so that feels very obvious to me. But I think that but I've also worked with sales teams of 160, right? Like very different model of profile of sales rep. So I think that it depends on your company size. It depends again on your company size. And then you could say, obviously, relying on one person, if your sales team is 3 or something, is not good, right? But if you're able to find some great player coaches or people that are able to be really flexible while they also have
Mhm.
specific experience, depending on how big your team is, I think this one is a very it dependsy question
Yeah.
for sure.
But it also comes down to if you've got an AE and an SDR, hopefully you've got an SDR that's helping the AE. Potentially they could step in for a little bit. I mean, I know there's big skill set differences as they grow. I think, there's all of those different depends pieces where you're looking at it like if your best player leaves, well, we just got into manufacturing. Oh, crud, they just left. Well, if I just got into it, we can probably pivot out of it until we can figure it out. Or if we've been in it for a while, there's got to be detail there. Hopefully they were a player coach, and that's what you should be hoping for from your sales leaders anyway.
Very true. And that's a whole other topic, right? That we can
Yes.
get into.
That's the next webinar.
Yeah, exactly.
Our mistake is bringing it up, but that's
Yeah. Mistake number 5. So we're disregarding no-shows and abandoned bookings. I think when you're booking meetings on the spot, yes, you're getting less people that are going silent and you're boosting those conversions, and those are all great. But now we're dealing with maybe no-shows. Now we're dealing with people who fill out the form and then abandon when the actual time comes to book the meeting onto their calendar. So it actually 44% of salespeople give up after that one follow-up, when most of the time sales needs 5+ follow-ups, right? And probably a lot of people, even in the chat or I've made this mistake, is kind of ignoring them completely, right? But remember, buyers have jobs, they get busy, things come up, they might have a packed schedule. It does not mean that these prospects are unqualified. I think a very common mistake is thinking that these no-shows or abandoned bookings means that the buyer is not ready or the prospect is unqualified. That's just not true. So I think, first of all, don't write them off. I think these are still people with high intent. And especially this market, if they're kind of your ideal customer profile, these are the people you want to talk to. You have to work for every deal, right? And we have to work hard for every deal. So what can we do? Marketing can help a lot with getting these meetings held. We can make sure that these leads are still part of the workflow. We can automate a lot of this follow-up for sales, throwing them in a sequence or automating these tasks and alerts for sales when bigger accounts come in. Like we mentioned before, have SDRs and utilize them to chase them down. Lots of things, right? And then the second thing is, if we're getting a bunch of these no-shows or abandoned meetings, abandoned bookings, let's figure out why. I think I do this on a kind of weekly, monthly basis, is trying to figure out why maybe there's a lot of no-shows coming in. Maybe the agendas are not exciting enough. Maybe you are having a specific channel or campaign that's bringing in a lot of no-shows. For abandoned bookings, maybe your website is slow. Maybe you're not offering a lot of time slots that work. Maybe it's like 1 to 2 time slots that you're offering people. So you want to make changes and really see if you can improve these numbers and have do that. You have to do this on a consistent basis. These are 2 examples, right? No shows and abandoned bookings. I would love Shannon to kind of get into how do we get more out of the inbound funnel, and how do we kind of really utilize marketers to be able to optimize this and get more out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a big one that we were talking about earlier around that fear of there not being as much volume. So what we're one of my colleagues often said, you don't want a funnel, you want a pipe, right? So you don't want anyone to fall out, right? And so this is one of those scenarios where you had people knocking on your door, you had them as hand raisers, and now they've, gone down the block, right? You don't know where they are. So I think this is where multi-threading can be really critical. So you can look at other potential buyers within the account. So really looking at every lead from the account perspective and not just the contact perspective. And you potentially using your leadership to connect with those folks. Like, does your CEO know someone in the account? Is there someone in your leadership team that can, reconnect with someone? Is it possible that this person just doesn't like email? Like a lot of folks have filters on their emails. I delete every single one. And I think also like, I'm just like full of rage when someone calls me on the phone. So like that too, like that's like, it could be a channel preference thing. Like, are you able to, also it could just be they realize not right now, which I think is okay. And I think it's really critical to continue to nurture them in a way that makes sense for them. Right. So I think spending more and more time on these folks is not going to be wasted because they did have a problem they believed that you could solve. And then something happened, right? And I do think these are ones that often there are trends, but a lot of the time they can be individual too. So
100%.
really making sure that your sales team is spending time and your marketers are spending time. Can your marketing team invite them to speak on a webinar, invite them to collaborate on content, invite them to do there's other ways to keep connections.
She's reading the list that I just made off of my paper.
Really?
Yeah, I was just writing all that stuff down so I wouldn't forget it because I forget stuff.
Yeah, I think that not right now.
Nice work, Shannon. Thank you, Shannon. Sorry, I didn't mean to minimize that. That was awesome.
Oh, amazing.
That was like, yeah.
No, I love the not right now because I think that that's so much more prevalent today than it was a couple years ago when people were like buying within a day or a week, or people would pop up out of nowhere and be like, I want to buy. And you're like, oh, this is perfect. Great. Right. Yeah, let's go. But there's more and more people that we have to kind of put in these nurture funnels and make sure that we're not forgetting about them and not disregarding them.
Right. And I think as Shannon just listed several really good examples of that, that like nurturing is not just emails. We all think it is, right? It's just one of those things that just got beat into our heads as marketers, whether you went to school for it, whether you grew up in it, doesn't matter. Nurturing is so much more. And Shannon mentioned multi-thread. That is huge, especially right now, y'all. Like this is one of those times where multi-threading, if you don't know what it is, that's totally fine. Multi-threading is where you're talking to other people at the company, potentially other people in the buying committee, because every company now is not like, I can't just say yes to something. I have my budget. I know if it'll fit, but I have to go get it approved. I have to find out from our RevOps team if it's something we can connect. I have to go around to others who might be using it, etc. And again, it goes back to solving. It's that what you said too earlier, Shannon, around your organizational change piece. So actually speaking to them, and you can do that in lots of different ways. You've got invite them on a panel, on a webinar, right? You also can invite them if you're doing field events, invite them to one of those. Maybe they want to come to your virtual whiskey tasting. It might be kind of fun. And maybe
I do. Invite me to that.
Yeah, I know. So I think that's so great. Like it is like, how do you go about doing that? I think the one on here where it's the no-shows and abandoned bookings, like I always think about that on the meetings and things, right? The other piece there is how are you tracking those and who has visibility into them?
Yes.
There's tools out there, yes. There's products out there, yes. There's also the potentially just having somebody updated on a note in their thing. You have a specific drop down, goes into a report, right? And you could easily automate that into something that gets marketing connected. Like, oh, this account just went silent. They didn't show up. Great. Everyone on it. You're now in a retargeting campaign. Yay.
1,000%. I know we're 5 minutes from time, so I wanted to get to the last mistake here. So our final mistake, setting it and forgetting it. I think we can do all of these things that we talked about, but you're not done, right? Optimizing the inbound sales funnel isn't just a check mark and set it, quit it, let's move on. And let's be honest, how many of you guys out there set up all the tools, set up your form, your CTA, all of these things, and maybe it hasn't changed in the last year or so, right? We're not making changes. We're not constantly checking to see if this is the best at what we can do right now. And what worked yesterday may not work today, right? Buyers change, our solutions change, we change. So Matt, opening this up, how can we make sure that what we're doing is working and that we're making the right changes? And how do we get that feedback and make sure that and measure success from all this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing is just conversation. You have to have conversations. That's it. Like, there's so many teams that don't meet back and forth. And when I say teams, I'm going to say marketing and sales. Let's just put that right there. If you don't have communication and back and forth and discussion and maybe not visibility into everything, but they have to know, right? You also have to be able to have the trust between the two so you can tell each other if it's not working. So you can tell them, okay, look, this is what our qualification status looks like to push it over into sales, right? Now it's an objective thing. We've got it. Let's do that. And you have to go back and forth on there. You have to experiment. Yes, on here, like there are things where, especially in the markets, I know we're coming out of things and yada, 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 but you have to be able to say, I have this small bit of budget set aside, or I've got this idea set aside, and we're going to try something. And you have to test it because that's really how you got to go with it. It just won't work if you're not having the communication, finding out more from each other, and consistently feeding it back into the system.
Yeah, and to Carlos' comment over here, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I think the question is, what does working mean? You need a shared definition on what working looks like, right? So like, are we saying that if we have a close rate of X, or if we have a quality, if this number of folks get to stage 2, like that defines the objective way of us saying it's working, right? And so we start to see those numbers drop. We start to see our reps struggling more in conversations. We start to see things start to get askew. That's where you need to make sure marketing has the visibility to be able to make changes and augment what we're talking about in terms of great, right? And so looking at them as a full revenue team where marketing is just as accountable for that revenue closing as sales, we just are two different players on the same team, right? And I think that there's having that shared definition is really, like, you literally can't do it without it, right? Because one person's working is another person's failing, right? And I think that that's where a lot of the friction does often come in.
Can I add one tiny thing onto that too? Because we all hear that as marketers, that it's working, but then we also hear we need more at the top of the funnel to make it happen better. If you're at very honestly, like, I'm going to say something that's probably not great. Is that where you want to be? Because if you're at a place where you're helping to make things work, your conversion rates maybe aren't where they need to be, things down the funnel are not where they need to be, you can show all of your top line and everything that you're working on is helping. And you're saying, oh, look at this. Marketing has added X percentage to the ARR, but everyone's still going, marketing, what are you going to do to get us this? You may want to think about it.
And then how many times have we said it's working, and then the next day things just, how do we stay ahead of it and make sure that we always are next step ahead, right? And I think that's so important. Cool. Well, I think we're right at 1 o'clock. or 4 o'clock Eastern time. So I did want to thank you, Shannon and Matt, for joining us. I think this was so many insights, so many great things. I think if anyone has any questions, we're really active, all of us, on LinkedIn. So I would say hit us up there, send us a message. I think that there's so much more of the conversation that could be had. But yeah, it was a great session, and thank you guys so much for joining out there, and have a great rest of your guys' day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.